Welcome to another episode of Pistons of Fury. In this episode, we're building some hidden coolers for our 1966 Dodge Coronet station wagon Turbo LS Mopar swap. Okay, so in this episode, we are tackling the cooling systems in the car. So I've got these two coolers. They're from G Plus Performance Parts, which is some anonymous, most likely China-based outfit. But I do have to say, and I've commented in an earlier video, these things are pretty nice. In terms of finish, they feel pretty hefty. Lots of rows, fins, all good. They come with mounting holes. They're steel. So I do plan on welding probably some brackets to these to mount them in place. And what's cool is that they come with 10 AN hose ends. So male 10 AN, so if you want to build your own AN hoses, you can just do that and connect them. So it should plumb right up. Other piece to this puzzle is this. This is like an old school Moroso remote oil filter. So if you remember, I fabricated my own pan, so I have 10 AN fittings on that pan that go in and out, and these are 1/2 inch NPT, and I have some AN adapters, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then it also has conveniently a mount for an auxiliary oil pressure source, which I'm going to use for my turbo. So I'm going to go 1/2 inch NPT to -4 AN for my turbo oil feed line, which I have kind of loosely mounted in the car right now. So the plan, as I've kind of sketched out in my little sketchbook here, see if I can get this to focus. Yeah. So assuming you can see that. So basically I have two feeds from the pan. I'm going to buy a sandwich style adapter, which is going to go between the remote oil filter housing and the oil filter itself, which will give me an in and an out line. So when that reaches 180 degrees, it'll kick the oil out to the oil cooler, it'll come back to that and send it through the filter and back to the engine. Now the one thing about this build is that I started pricing all this stuff out on Summit, and these AN fittings get really expensive really fast. If I were going to do both my transmission and my oil cooler, I'd probably be looking at somewhere around like $400 just for all the fittings and the hoses and everything. So what I think I'm going to do for now is basically convert all of these back to hose barb. I'm going to use standard 5/8 inch rubber fuel resistant hose, and I'm just going to run fuel and hose clamps, barb fittings, and I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be leak free. I know it's because of YouTube and the internet, everybody likes to go full AN, but I really don't want to spend a couple $100 doing all that plumbing and going through the hassle of doing AN lines, when I know just to get it running and see how everything works, I can get away with just plain old rubber fuel hose and hose barbs. So that's what I'm going to do. So we're going full rubber hose barbs on this, hose clamps. Worked for a long time, factory applications, even high pressure. So that's the way we're going to do it. So we're going to kick the project off. First thing I need to do is figure out how I'm going to mount these in the front of the car so that they don't, so that they're not completely obvious that they're like not stock. And yeah, so just going to find a mounting place and we'll get started making some brackets for these and clearancing the spots we're going to mount them. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit hard to see, but basically what I'm going to end up doing is I have, for my bumper, I've got these two bumper brackets, so one that comes straight out and then one that comes off at an angle off the frame. And conveniently, there's a ovaled out hole on the one side. It's missing a hole down here, but essentially, if I have the cooler mounted under the car like this, I'm basically going to mount it flush like that so that I've got one entry through that existing hole, and then I'm going to drill another hole here on the near side, I guess toward the bottom of the frame of the camera, and essentially just mount my cooler like this. And then what I'll do is once I get it plumbed, the plumbing is going to kind of pass, let me see if I can do this, up through here, right through this area, and then back through a hole that I'll cut or that I'll drill in the firewall. And basically the way it's going to work is I'll then create a little bit of ducting on the bottom of this cooler. So down here, air will go under, kind of pull up through a scoop and up through the cooler and out through the wheel well. So I'll get some decent airflow. There's actually precedent for this. This has been done in like rally cars, road racing cars. They have ducting that feeds coolers that aren't right in front of the engine. So cool benefit for me is it keeps it hidden over here. It's out of the way, stays out of the way of my main cooling. So my intercooler, AC condenser, radiator, that'll just be stacked in the front. And then my auxiliary coolers, I'll basically mirror the same setup over on the other side. So the other side, which is just harder to film in my garage, is that's going to be the oil cooler setup, and over here this will be the transmission. So I'm going to do my prototyping here where it's easier for me to get to, and then we'll replicate on the other side. So the first step is I just have to come in here and pull this out, and then I'll do some measurements and see what I can do to fab up a bracket for that. Okay, so quick sit rep on where we are here. Whatever metal this is, it does not weld very well at all. So, given that this is my test piece that I'm doing on this side, I may come back and do it differently on the other side. We will have to see, because it did not like that at all. I think maybe what I'll do for the other side is when I do my spacers, I'm actually going to weld them to this stock steel piece. So basically they'll sit inside, be mounted on there, and then I'll just drill an extra hole basically through this and mount it that way. But it's effective, so as a prototype this is pretty good because it positions these exactly where I need them. The hole I drilled is kind of dead on center, and it'll mount fine. It'll just look a little janky, but I'm going to paint all this anyway, so it should be okay. So next thing I need to do is just drill through here and actually drill through this outer piece, and yeah, wish I'd done things in a little bit better order, but this will work. Got to learn as you go. Next side will be twice as fast, as I'm sure you guys are familiar with. Okay, so new approach. Last one didn't work. Basically, whatever metal or tin or whatever you want to call it that the cooler is made out of is not really weldable, so it doesn't really lend itself to a clean install that way. So I'm going to fab up some brackets to mount to both sides, use the existing bolt holes, and to do that, we're going to use pops. So let's get started. Okay, time for a little update. So here we are. This is the bumper brace, and I've got it all mounted. The last thing you saw was just me drilling the holes in the actual brace and getting it all fit up. So I used the same hardware for everything, so it should be pretty straightforward. It's kind of weird, but this LS swap, I'm kind of mixing metric and standard into this car, whereas prior the car was all standard. So this is all standard hardware. I guess the metric stuff will just keep restricted to the engine compartment. But anyway, so the way it works is this basically just sits like that and comes off the frame rail. So the frame rail comes here and it sits at an angle, and this is parallel to the ground. So what I'm gonna have to do once I get this running, and once we see if this thing actually keeps it cool or not, I'm probably gonna have to come in and build a duct for the bottom, which I'll be able to just probably mount onto here with yet more brackets or something like that, and direct some airflow up into the cooler. But for now, kind of comes through here. This is the factory hole, this oval hole that's for the bolt access to mount this to the car, and I had to drill this one. So almost fully centered. Admittedly, probably not my best fab work. Yeah, just the welding could have been better, and the fit and finish could have been better. But hey, when it's all painted, it should look okay. It's presentable. And you know what? Like all these things that are car related, the other side's going to be probably twice as easy and look twice as good. So live and learn, I guess. Yeah, so I'm going to put in the car. I'll do another quick clip, and yeah, we'll see how it fits. Okay, so here's the final piece all assembled. Again, have it mounted on this bumper bracket here, and have everything just all kind of fabbed up, so you can see my two AN fittings, or AN10 male fittings, pop right through this bracket. So next thing I'm going to do is just throw this in the car and see what kind of clearance I have for my hoses, and then I'll know what plumbing to order and work with. Okay, so have it mounted, and basically where we're at is the bumper bracket is mounted in here, and we've got this cooler kind of fit perpendicularly but parallel to the ground, so that it tucks right behind the wheel well, and you can kind of see it poke through right there. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to see how it goes when I get the car running and everything connected, and we'll see what the temperatures are like. And if I need to, I will probably end up taking like a little air inlet and air duct and just directing some air toward that, or potentially doing some sort of scoop up under the bumper to direct air up into there. But it's good for now. It's out of the way. It's not going to take any cooling away from the radiators, which is good. That was kind of my main goal of this. So side one done. Took way longer than I thought. So just going to get started on the second side, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so that's going to be a wrap for this episode. Where we ended up is this is the second one that I built. But basically we have this brace which supports the bumper, so this is one of the bumper brackets. And again, just to recap, came through and drilled an extra hole in the stock bumper bracket, leveraged this existing oval hole, which is an access hole for one of the bolts. to be installed, and have that in here. So basically just mounted with a hardened bolt on the bottom, and then created these brackets to mount this pretty sturdily. So basically this is going to go back in the car, and then I'm going to run some -10 AN lines kind of inside the bumper, tucked back into the bumper. You won't be able to see them from the front of the car. So that's it for this episode. In the next episode, we're going to tackle the plumbing for this. So on this side, this is actually the driver's side of the car. This will be straight AN, -10 AN lines all the way to the oil filter housing and back to the oil pan. And then on the other side, we're going to do a little bit of a mix of probably stock to AN6, and we'll have some adapters in there, but I want to use the stock transmission lines because there's really they work, and there's really no reason to replumb all that if I don't have to. And they also fit pretty tight in the transmission tunnel. So anyway, we'll get into more of that in the plumbing episode, which is coming up next. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, throw me a like, subscribe to the channel. Slowly but surely, this is one of those projects. It's just everything takes a little bit more time than you thought. So just got to keep trucking. All right, we'll see you guys in the next one.